What's up, gang? Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius and Don. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now, listen, the Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, more as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius and Don, and boy, do we have a special guest. Don Jose Ruiz is in the house. Jose, how you doing, my friend?
Very good, my friend. Very good and very grateful to be here with you this podcast.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I know it's so early in Salt Lake, but glad to have you here. And yeah, really pumped to have you on the show. So if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of give our audience a little bit of background on how we got you to come on the show, and then would love to give your formal bio and some of the context around like where you got to where you got to. Is that okay with you?
Yes, very fine.
Perfect, you guys. So Don Jose Ruiz, he goes by Jose, is a best-selling author, modern-day shaman, and Toltec master of transformation. I'm really excited to learn more about that on today's show. His latest book in 2023 is The Shaman's Path to Freedom, a Toltec wisdom book. And he co-authored the follow-up to the really world-famous book, The Four Agreements, called The Fifth Agreement, which he wrote with his father, who is a very famous individual, who we'll be talking about a little bit today on today's show as well. So, Jose, welcome to the show. Here at the Greatness Machine, we love origin stories. Would love, if you didn't mind, if you could give us a little bit of your background. How did you get to where you got to?
Well, it all was all when I was growing up with my family. I come from a family of generations of Nahuatls that in America they call shamans. But it was like my great grandfather. He was the first Mexican born in New Spain. And from there, we have all the information of our family lineage. That from there goes to his son Leonardo, then his daughter Sarita, that's my grandmother, and then my father Miguel Ruiz, that's my father, and then it's me. So it's all these generations coming together, my brothers. And one of the things about the family is that you don't know what's going to happen in life. You don't pick where to be born, what gender to be, or what race to be. You just get thrown into life. And I got into my family's tradition. And at a certain age, I knew what I wanted to do because I just loved hanging around them. The only thing I wasn't expecting was the life that happens, what happens in life, the pain, the addictions, the path of when you go to school, where life takes you. And the moment that I begin going into that journey, I lost myself. But thankfully that I returned back to my roots. But like they say in the tradition, once you send an apprentice to the jungle, they may not make it. But if they make it, they will bring the medicine. And the medicine is not for everybody, but for themselves. So we all have in life when we lose ourselves, when we lose our inspiration, when we lose our purpose. So when we find it, it's because we find a reflection of our own integrity. And this is the basing of the agreement work that it is done. Because let's say the agreements, we all know them. We hear them, we read them, it sounds familiar because it's our integrity talking to us. So this is what happened to me. I learned the Toltec tradition, but in the Toltec tradition, there's nothing to learn but to unlearn what takes your inspiration away, because Toltec means artist of the spirit. So my journey was to get myself back into track to loving life.
Love that, my friend. So you're give a little bit more on the family background. Your father, Miguel Ruiz, is very famous in the world for the Four Agreements. It's a book that I think they promoted through Oprah. It's this is a world renowned book. It sounds like there was a tradition before he wrote the book that a lot of those learnings came from. Tell us a little bit about that, because it sounds like the family has a strong spiritual background, a strong background of teachings. I'd love to hear a little bit of that background that led to your father doing the work that he did, and then I guess subsequently how that's parlayed into you really going into the jungle, seeing that reflection, and coming back with the medicine. So I'd love to hear a little bit about context around that, because the other part of that, I think that's probably interesting for the listeners, is having a famous father, like that casts a wide shadow, right? And I'd be curious to know how that affected you. But yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit of the family background too.
Well, yes, the family background is really interesting because it's not about generations where you're born, what times you're born. It could be happening anywhere in time. And it is the fact that we enter the dream of humanity. And the dream of humanity's purpose is to dream and to reflect whatever they get inspired, they create on this earth. That's why you see many creations from animals, from nature, that men and women reflect and create. So the foundation of the Toltec is that life is a dream, that the whole dream is about the mind's purpose. And the mind purpose is to dream, to imagine, to create things. So when one begins being aware that if you don't like your life, you can let it go and start over and create a new dream that you would like to live. And the thing that in my family tradition, we've all asked the same question when we ask our teachers, which is our family members, our parents, our grandparents, is there more than life than this? Is when we feel drained, when we say we study for something, we learn for something, we get in a relationship for something, thinking that will bring us happiness, so we work so hard, but then we find out that it's not making us happy because we're not living something else's dream that is called the machine, the dream of the planet. In order to wake up from this machine is to really begin trusting yourself. And to trust yourself, you have to know that you are the magician, like they say in the tarot card. Because without the magician, there's no tarot, there's no cards, there's no dream, there's no life, there's no knowledge. And exactly with the Toltec tradition, the human that wakes up has the potential to spread this information, these new dreams, concept of ideology, of religions, of ways of life, and try to share it with other humans. And then all of a sudden, this program like fire becomes alive. But the sad thing about it is the people use the word against themselves. They use knowledge and wisdom, no matter how intelligent they are. They create this machine and belief. If they don't live with open heart and really accepting life and death, then this could become like a destination to nowhere. And this is when the searching becomes poison because we're searching for something that doesn't exist. Because reality, it is when we accept life as it is, we learn to let everything go, even our belief system, the way we think, knowing that it's just a program, and then we can communicate with other programs to other dreams. But we cannot get that far unless we're learning the Toltec path, that in the Toltec path, there's nothing to learn but unlearn, was taking our inspiration away. So in this moment, we know that life is a dream. So in this moment, let's say to my father, he was a medical doctor, he was trained with science. So he couldn't follow the superstition of his ancestors anymore because many people turn that, that's searching and putting a master in a pedestal and they know everything and nobody else knows everything and they don't believe in themselves. And this creates a dogma, a cult, a religion that is not about the Toltec work. The Toltec work is to be aware that you are living a life and then there's only two truths. You live, you're born, and then you die. So in the space in between that, you can get power, and the power it is in the believing of yourself, so you can detach from anything that has nothing to do with you. That's why Father wrote these four agreements that he really wrote them for himself to remember himself that he is dreaming, which is to be impeccable with the word, because the word is the creation, like they say in the Bible. First was the word, and the word was with God, and the word is God. So if you name the word God, creation and life, we are all life. And when we wake up knowing that we all this life, that we can contribute something beautiful into this world. And sometimes it doesn't know that we want to do it or we dream of doing it. It's something that comes organically, like a tree that gives fruit or like a plant that gives a flower. It's something that we naturally do. The only thing we need to do is just to completely believe in ourselves. So the thing it is, if we like our dream, we can continue with it. But if we don't like it, we can change it. And this is the point of the Toltec.
And so well, thank you for that. And just for the audience, just so they for people but me that have not read the book, which I know that there's millions and upon millions that have read the book. The four agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Did I get those right?
Yes.
It's so like it's funny like when I read a lot of this, like obviously don't be impeccable with your word is integrity, right? This is around the integrity and I guess that's so A, you can live with yourself to know that you are true, and B, others can feel the same way. There's a reflection of that. But if it's all about self, it's knowing that what you say is what you mean, right? Don't take anything personally, and don't make assumptions. It sounds to me like that's a lot about ego, right? Right, like how our ego, and a lot of the things when you're talking, I'm like, oh man, like when I'm at my worst, when I'm not feeling like I'm living my dream, it's when a lot of the times it has very little to do with what's happening. It has a lot to do with how I'm assuming others are seeing me, how I'm assuming, like, maybe how I'm not showing up the way I want to show up. There's a lot of friction around that, a lot of beliefs that I have that maybe are being challenged, and I'm not accepting that I can convince people the way I want to convince them. And then I start to assess my own worth with that. And the last one, always do your best, I think, is it kind of goes back to this integrity. Like always, I say it to my kids. I have two kids, and I'm like, look, I don't care. One of my kids is in theater. He's a performing artist, and I've said to him, and he's not a very like athletically competitive person, but so like he doesn't have that natural inclination to compete like in a way that's like some people have. He is competitive, but not in the most obvious way. And so I would say to him, I go, look, I don't care at all, like, if how good the outcome is. All I care about is how hard you worked to create that outcome. Like, all I care is that you actually tried your best, that you did everything possible to create the best outcome. And if you do that, you're in control of that. You're not in control of it, whether you win, win the award, right? All that person said I'm good, I win, right? Like whatever that means. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because it sounds to me like having a father that's enlightened, that is connected with his own Toltec path, conscious. There's a lot of I see a lot of consciousness here, like really like connecting to the greater consciousness. How did, like, for you, why do you think, you said it sounded like things were hard for you for like growing up, or at least when you were younger and you went into the jungle, saw the reflection, came out a better person. What was it about, having a role model like that and then having a tough time yourself? What was the disconnect there?
Well, you said it right there. The magical word was consciousness. When I got lost, it's because my conscience got dirty. My conscience was full of guilt and shame. And then in that energy, I created stories that I believed that were not true. And I made them believe it because, that's the addiction of suffering right there. When you get hooked by a program that's like a virus that's eating you alive, you're not running conditionally open hearted anymore, but it's a wounded heart. So it's like when someone sees someone that's sick passing by, coughing or sneezing or runny nose, you see there's a contagious right there. So sometimes the sick don't know that they're sick because they're so attached to their image, to their lies, to their goal. And that was what happened to me. Because let's say if you don't domesticate your children, someone else will. And the ones who are going to domesticate your children begin in school. Other teachers, other parents, other adults. But in school is what kids begin teasing and bullying each other. So in that moment, I created for myself to stand the pure pressure, and I begin doing what wasn't feeling good to me, like defending myself, fighting, or picking a fight before I got bullied, and that kind of world that once in a little you begin losing yourself, and also in the dream of machismo, that you have to get all these partners, or you got to play this game and stuff like that in order to fit in with the other men, in the thing. So little by little, the consciousness begin being dirty because one begins to lie. And they say that the name, let's say, for the used player, one, it begins playing itself with lies because it's not true. What is leading humans is to a dream of suffering, and that's where it led me. So of course, when you begin walking a journey of suffering, substance is waiting for you: alcohol, drugs, or overeating, or using love. There's You can even use work, anything that you would use against yourself to escape. So when you're escaping, it's because you're escaping to see yourself in the mirror. So I was in the world of drug addiction because that was my escape to numb myself. And
Mm-hmm.
after many death experiences, many things that happened to my physical body, I asked my father the question: is there more than life than this? And he said, of course there is. He gave me a big hug, welcome back home. But now it's time to unlearn, to let go of everything that you take personal, of every story that you create that makes assumption that is not really, and start doing your best because you're doing your worst. And even doing our worst, we do our best, because we are the king sufferer, we're the king martyr, we're the king victim. And who are we if we're not that? But it comes a moment that your conscience is dirty. Like, let's say if I want to speak in an audience and I don't deal with myself, I have no business speaking in the audience and I don't speak. I really don't. But because I have nothing to share, I have to clean my conscience before I do an act of service. And if I'm going through something, I say right away, I'm going through something. But, in taking the action and going forward, it's like we go through the fog, or we call through the illusion, through the lies, because we return back to our consciousness. So in our consciousness, we know if we're lying to ourselves or we're not lying to ourselves. We know what love is because we know what love is not. We begin noticing what we are in our power because we know when we're not in our power. And many times when I was in substance and I wasn't in my power. And even when I recovered and I was sober, even believing the excuses and the lies and the stories that got me to do the addictions, I lose my power. So in that moment, I begin noticing this is not the character that I think I am. Many secondary characters that I hurt, or they use my image to hurt themselves, they will only see what they want to see. So in that moment, I know that it's only up to me to change my dream because no one knows how I'm dreaming. If I live a life of suffering, no one else can know it, only me, because I am Jose. And to know Jose is because to accept myself just the way that I am. And this is why I say, my name is Jose, and I am addicted to suffering. I have this addicted energy. But in case to use it against me, that gets my consciousness dirty, I would use my consciousness to heal me. I lost a lot of weight. Because I was like overweight, like more than 100 pounds overweight, that I was
Yeah.
physically, not healthy, that I couldn't speak. So in order to speak and do what I continue doing, my conscience to be clean, I have to walk my talk. And only I know what is my talk. Like the audience know what is their talk, what is stopping them. So honesty leads us to clean consciousness. And clean consciousness, it is the moment that we know. Because sometimes when you hear these agreements, they're so easy, you hear them, but the moment that you try to apply them, we can see the attachments we have to the stories that make us suffer in life.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm someone that also lost over 100 pounds, so I know what you mean, because especially when you have these different, whatever it is, whatever gets you there. Sometimes it's biology, sometimes it's probably a combination of food addiction, not loving yourself, all these things. So congrats on that. I think some people. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it's this guy that was an actor who was very overweight, Ethan Suplee. And it was funny because they were saying, "Oh, well, like I think a lot of people, they make it's almost like, oh, well, you've chosen to be that way." And I'm like, well, that's the one addiction that you have to do after you're done being addicted to it. You still have to eat. like I used to be addicted to cigarettes. I'm like, it was really hard for me to quit smoking cigarettes, like when I was very, very young. And I was barely even addicted to it, but I'm like, that was a choice, and like I just stopped, right? I just didn't do it ever again. And so the food's different. Like if you're someone that's overweight, like, and you lose the weight, like you got to get up tomorrow and eat food.
Yeah.
You can't escape it. So
Yeah.
congrats on that.
And I know, and that the interesting part it is that our willpower becomes stronger, and then we can also see now we're still hungry, so we have to choose food that make us feel good instead
Yeah,
of food that make us, because the moment that we stop eating food that make us feel bad, we can taste it. The moment we taste a little bit of it, we can know that the body doesn't like that. And
yeah,
the interesting part, this is exactly like the Toltec tradition. It is, there's some stories, some thought that doesn't make us feel good. We can be having the greatest day, but if we put our attention on something that we see outside that only happened for 30 seconds, but it reminded us of something that happened 10 years ago, and we open that door, and we don't distract ourselves and we continue putting attention, it's like eating that food again. And the
Yeah.
body doesn't like that, the mind doesn't like that. So it is the like the magical kitchen, like my father talks about, like when you got your strong will, if we can overcome the food addiction or any kind of addiction, there's nothing that we cannot stop from overcoming.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that as far as, but it makes sense, right? Like showing yourself that you have willpower to build the life you want to live it could be as little as as big as losing a lot of weight, or as little as just making like starting to see I guess the word I always use is like, what's that trigger? What's that thing that happens that to your point, brings you back to something that happened 10 years ago or 30 years ago. And it's interesting you use the example of like the machismo as a kid and fighting, because I actually had similar experience. Um, I think where'd you grow up? Did you grow up in Utah or did you grow up in the States?
I grew up in Tijuana, Mexico.
Okay, so you grew up in Mexico, and so obviously that's a huge culture of machismo. And my wife is family's from Chihuahua, so but I grew up. My father's Iranian, and I don't know how it was in Tijuana, but I grew up in the United States in Southern California, and I grew up in a very predominantly like white upper middle class environment. And my name is Darius Mirshazadeh. I'm brown. I don't, my mom's white, is Italian, but I had curly hair and I was a little bit overweight, and like I was, if you grow up in that type of environment, like you have a target on your back, like and so what ended up happening was I have a twin brother, and he got it worse than I did, but we both had targets on our back, and so we got made fun of and we got picked on, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. My two things happened from this because it started very young. I was probably 9. I mean, like I was pretty young. I was in 4th grade, so 9 years old. Which is funny because I have a son who's 11 years old now, and I have a son that's 14 years old, and I see them when they're 9. Those are little kids. So to know that that was like the thing that was happening then, it's been as I've grown up, I've been like, shit, man, that's a little kid. Like they don't deserve that. Um, my innate response was to stand up for myself, like you. My innate response was to fight, and I ended up doing that. And so inside of me is this, and I don't think it's my best self, but I've always called it like my inner warrior, right? Where I'm like I there's a point in which, and it comes out even now. It's not my best self, but it's there to protect me, and it shows up. And there's been a part of me that's had pride around that because I'm like, I know I can take care of myself, right? I protect myself, and I think the world can be a hard place, right? There's people that will try to take advantage and hurt you, and then there's another part of me that, as I've gotten older, that sees that if I get angry or enraged, which can happen, like even now, that's not like none of those feelings feel good. They, although I might feel safe, the safety feels good, or the knowledge of safety feels good, but the actual feeling when it happens is very bad. Like because the rage, each that's the fire turns on, right? And so I have that in me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like both sides of that, because I think like there's a part of me that's like feels protected by the rage, and there's a part of me that when it happens, I like it ruins my day. It's not it ruins my week maybe. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, one important thing to know, especially in the terms of shamanism, is that we're just energy. So let's imagine we're this energy trapped in a bottle, and the bottle is us. So sometimes we have this anger, this negative energy, and especially when that negative energy is triggered by a thought, then the thought can become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the energy just explodes into things. So there's a magical thing that happens is once again we return to a willpower, and with a willpower we overcome temptation that comes from the thoughts by controlling our negative emotion. Like let's say we're angry, we're about to scream, and some people are addicted to that. They're addicted to screaming. Like in relationships, they scream, they fight, and then say, I forgive you, please forgive me. And it's like a broken record of insanity. And people live like this. But it comes a moment when we're responsible for our own energy, and it doesn't feel good anymore. I totally understand. It doesn't feel like we have to confront something from the outside, especially someone with negative energy, because there's parasites in this world. And when I call parasites, there's negative people who just want to do ill or harm, or just want to cheat people, and you put that mask, but you don't believe it. And it comes a moment that you really wear that mask and you don't believe it because you're communicating a language that they know. But on the other hand, it feels uncomfortable when we have to do that. It feels uncomfortable when we have to be like this mama jaguar and protecting our cub from the outside. But honestly, we shouldn't feel guilty for that either. And sometimes we feel guilty because we're not this nice person or these things, but we didn't do it. We just closed the door because we reflected what's in the outside.
Mm.
Now, it's important to make peace. Like many people had told me, why are you mad at the Spaniards? And this is talking from my own people, my own shamanic tradition. And they call me, why aren't you mad at the Spaniards? Because they invaded us. I go, they didn't invade the Spanish that live today. They didn't do it. It was the mentality that happened thousands of years ago that made all this. So why should we be angry or something that happened 1,000 years? Now, let's take it a little bit forward to controlling our energy. Why should we take something personal that happened last week or even 2 days ago and returning to that energy to get out the negative part of ourselves? This is when we begin controlling our energy, especially when we react. It's like the rattlesnake. When it's young, it cannot control its poison, but when it's older, it has more poison, but it knows how to control it. And it's like we human with awareness. We know how to control our emotional poison or or wounds. And especially when we love people in today's age, we live in a society where people get triggered so easily, or they're fighting somebody else's debates or war or belief system, if it's politics or it's football or whatever it is. Like, I still love some people in my family that they're still alive, but they trigger me sometimes when they start talking about political or whatever, like I mentioned, hate against the other race, and it doesn't feel good, but they're still alive that I can hold their hand. So what do I do? Well, I use my imagination. Like, say, an imagination is that, okay, I'm going to see this cousin, it's, oh my God, it's political season right now, but I still love him, it's gonna happen the holidays in Thanksgiving, and things like that. Okay, but I imagine that I go with the oxygen tank and a scuba gear, and I'm controlling my energy. But there's a moment in that reunion where I'm getting triggered. I know I'm getting triggered. I know it's not personal. I know it's just an automatic. So it's up to me to break that automatic, for me to contribute to that automatic outside. And I have to take myself away from that place. Say whatever, my oxygen is stuck, is getting low, so I have to go back to the surface. Need to go back to my dream. And it comes a moment in life where people trigger us because it's something that we trigger to ourselves, something that we want to live behind, and we don't want to live that way anymore. It's like, there's drug dealers that sold us drug once, but now there's drug dealers of emotional poison. And let's say when someone complains about, I'm a loser, I can never make it, and you can talk to this person for 20 years and it's the same record. Or you can now identify people who are going to stop your creativity or growing successfully in whatever you want to create. That's why my grandmother always said, it's so important for you to not gossip about your dreams that you want to create. Is because there's out there people who want to sabotage your dreams because they're sabotaging their dreams themselves because they cannot control their energy because they're full of anger, resentment. And this is how the world lives. This is why people are afraid to be successful. And even when one is successful, like we're talking about losing weight, one time I was sharing, that I overcame this addiction that I had of eating and eating junk food, and I take care of my temple. Now I begin sharing it, and then someone said I was fat shaming. Now I was body shaming, but it had nothing to do with that, And somebody begin getting comfortable in a pain that they're used to. That in a Toltec we call the island of safety, where we live in a pain that we're used to because we're afraid of the unknown. But when we're tired of living a certain way and we know that one day we're going to go home, one day we're going to die. So there's no time to waste. And this is when I imagine this with like the scuba gear, I also imagine that I wear a skeleton key, because the skeleton key is a reminder that one day I will not be alive. So I don't have to sacrifice myself to be in situations in life where I don't want to be, where my consciousness is not clean.
Interesting. I love that. What talking about the book and the work you're doing right now, um I'd love to talk about the Fifth Agreement a little bit, and I haven't read the book yet, but I'd love to. Can you tell us what is the Fifth Agreement?
The fifth agreement is to be skeptical, but learn to listen. And many people think that it's being skeptical of the outside, of other people. But no, it's to be skeptical of our own negativity, is to be skeptical of our own poison. And that's why learning to listen is to putting attention with your heart. If it feels good or it feels bad, it's that simple. We just make it so complicated because we don't want to change. And when we're skeptical of our own negativity, that gives us the strong will to overcome whatever we need to overcome. So for me, the fifth agreement really helped me to work on the four agreements, to be impeccable with my word, to not take things personally, and to not make assumptions. Why? Because I was skeptical of my storyteller. The one storyteller, well, I was a drug addict, this is why things happened to me, or my wife left me, or whatever it is, that story, it could have been true at one point, but it's no longer true anymore. So let's say, like in the art theaters, people still, when they get a heartbreak, like my teachers explain in the actor book of my Don Miguel and Doña Barbara, if one begins talking about sad break and heartbreaks, right away one will begin thinking about when they get heartbreaks, when they were in that world. And when we begin having a new, fresh heartbreak for ourselves that we're not expecting, all of a sudden the temptation when we were 15, or when we were 25 or 35 or 45 years old, the way we handle, jealousy or heartbreak, that character will come back again. But when you see it and you feel it, you're standing on his field, this doesn't feel good. This is not me anymore. So many people do not know how to grow in relationships, how to grow in themselves, how to grow out of a business, how to grow because there's still more life to experience. And this is sometimes when we feel trapped in a dream, it's because we're not being skeptical of our own negativity, because we're believing our negativity. And this is when we have the three masteries. We overcome the mastery of the victim, the poor me, I can never do it. Then we become the mastery of the warrior. Yes, I did leave it. But I don't want to be fighting all my life anymore. I want to, live in peace. And it's when the dream of the angels, the dream of the master comes into place. And in the dream of the masters is when you live life, hard, easy, whatever it was, beautiful, a nightmare. But you come to the conclusion that you want to finish your soup in peace for the rest of your life. And the soup is a representation of the rest of your life. That you don't want no more dramas, no more victimizations, no more false ideology what make us happy. You're just now beginning real to you. And this is when you bring the medicine from the jungle, because you're living your own dream.
Do you think that, like, as you said that last part, like the soup, the soup of our, it's, can you say that one more time? The soup of, you called it something. The
Oh, my soup of life.
soup of life. Yeah. So it's funny, as you were saying that, I started thinking about, and there's obviously a lot of other folks out there outside the Toltec tradition, whether you talk about Buddhism or Taoism, or this idea of letting go, Hinduism, like not being attached, like especially Buddhism. You made me think of that, where it's like this releasing, not being attached. If the soup of life is to be peaceful, and if an enlightenment is not having an attachment, is how you get there. That's what I had heard you say. And so one question is, if we're in a dream, and I release my conscious ego, because I think, like, when I start thinking of the dream that I'm in, and the times when I'm inflamed, or there's friction, or there's lack of peace, 99 out of 100 times, actually probably 100 times, I feel like I'm being offended by something, and that's my ego talking, right? And the times where I'm at peace, I found are two ways. One is that my ego is being fed, right? Which is not. By the way, there's no disattachment there. I'm very attached to that, right? My ego is being fed, so I'm okay now. I'm satisfied because that's not at risk. Or when I've just like let go, or I'm like, fuck it, like I'm not in control. Like I'm choosing to be here. This is what's happening. I'll get through it. Like I'm not going to let this stuff trigger me or upset me. Like this, to your point, this is a dream. I'm only here as far as I know from now till whenever, and then who knows what happens to me. And this doesn't mean anything. So like one of the things that I've been talking about a lot lately is I have a friend, a great friend who's we've been talking a lot around consciousness, and he said, you know, he's really infatuated by this idea of revolution. And he said, well, what revolution are you dealing with right now? And I said, well, it's really interesting because I've come to the conclusion, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, that there's this line in the sand, and on one side is what really matters, and then on the other side is a thing that like I pretend matters, and I'm okay with that. I call it the game, and
Yeah.
I gotta go like a video game. I'm gonna go play the game, and I get sucked into the game, but I know it's a game, and that's business and making money and being renowned and people like thinking my opinion matters and people liking me and being popular, and there's all bullshit, right? And in the past, I actually pretended like that was real, but I know that's not real. That's all up here. And at the end of the day, no one will care. No one cares about this except me. And what really matters is the relationships I'm building with the people I love, how I'm making their life better, how I'm serving people around me, how can I, make less people suffer and just through my own actions, how can I myself be living in peace. And I know that that's real life. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
But this is great because it comes a moment where we realize we're the messenger. But the question is, what message are we sharing? And that's what you just said exactly right now. The last, we're sharing the best part of ourselves. We're sharing goodness. We're sharing like a good lessons for the children because one day we're not gonna be here, so we give them all the best, all the things because it comes from our heart, and we live this way in our household. But then, like we said earlier, like you said earlier, when we change our diet, we still have to eat. We still have to live. So we see all the priorities of life, but we still have to get entertained, to have fun. And this is where all the things begin challenging to do, like, to create art, to make music, to make books, to create whatever we want to do, in life. But, it comes a moment like I remember, like, especially my little grandkid, he was playing in the living room, and he was jumping. He was playing like he was like a Super Mario Brothers, jumping. But all of a sudden, he jumped and fell on a toy, and he said, "Pause the game, pause the game." He started crying. I had little pain. Okay, he dealt with it, and then okay, pause the game. Let's play again. And this is the important thing about wisdom that people do not know about. They take wisdom to go and hide and regurgitate it. But wisdom is the medicine that we need to take it when we need to take it. And then when we don't need to take it, we put it in the shelf and continue living our life, like having fun, creating like we're going to live forever. Because, if we take the same medicine every day, it's going to make us sick. So we only take it when it makes us. So we find the perfect balance in life, knowing that we are the messenger and our message can be put into different traditions. Like, let's say I have the Toltec message that is really about life and death and enjoying this dream, knowing that you're an artist to create whatever it's in your heart, because this is what we're going to leave behind, anyways. But if we talk to, let's say, to Hindu, to Tibetan, or to other religions, if I take the words away of my belief system and just listen, I begin noticing the same words with the energy, but with different ways of saying it, and we're talking the same thing, but it's not the language, it's the intent behind the language.
Mm.
What's the intent behind the language? It's just a life force, and that life force is what can identify the playing dream, the dream of the planet, the bullies, the negativity, the positivity, and then the appreciation of being grateful to be alive.
Oh,
That
I
no
love
matter
that.
what someone else does, you just love them. And this is the
Yeah.
point of view of the shaman, of the elders.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love that. Um, I'm assuming we would like, the latest book, The Shaman's Path to Freedom, a Toltec wisdom book. I'm assuming we're talking a lot about what's in there, but is there anything in there that stands out that you'd like to talk about that we haven't talked about already?
Well, the important thing is that our own path to freedom is exactly that. It's our own path. It's nobody else's path. In our path, we find our own reflections of our thoughts, of our mirrors. And the thing to do in this path is to make of our life, of our walk, a masterpiece of art with it. And that includes with the heartbreaks. Like, in the addiction of suffering, I noticed that I used to take everything personal so I can contribute to that. But then after the years passed, I go to my father like a year ago and I go to him, you know, Father, is it strange that I like to be judged now? Why? And I like to be judged, not to beat myself with it. I like to get judged because I feel taking it personally. I feel it because sometimes people understand that to take it personally doesn't mean that you don't feel. No, you still feel it, but how it affects you is different because I turn that into medicine. Any judgment, anything from the outside, because it has nothing to do with me. The second agreement is to not take this personal. So when people attack us, it has nothing to do with us. It's them. So if we don't use that poison to hurt ourselves, we don't fix anymore the arm with addiction of suffering. On the contrary, we do an experiment like an autopsy, and we see it as a clear teaching. What made this person do this? What could make me react to them? How did I
Mm,
stop reacting to that? So that equation becomes a teaching. And this is exactly what all religions, all mystery schools, science, and everything is trying to explain to humanity. It's not the truth, the delivery of the words, but the intent behind it, that it will be recognized. That's why in the Four Agreements, the first time that I read it, I went to my father and said, I know this information. He goes, of course you know it. Everyone knows it because it's integrity talking to integrity. People
mm,
just remind themselves that. But now, when I wanted to practice like them, I said, I'm going to learn a piece of cake. But after a month, I went to him and I said, these agreements are difficult. He said, no, son, the agreements are so simple. The agreements that are difficult is the one that you made yourself in life with yourself.
mm.
So that is the moment that we decide to break the agreements in the Toltec path. So we can continue walking in our own path. And in our own path, there is no searching anymore. There's no human that we're going to search for to give us freedom because everyone's the same. And we begin respecting ourselves like the earth because we're the energy inside the earth. And this includes our physical body. And I hear many people talk about kombucha saying there's a good bacteria. And I begin laughing because, this is a great joke because we all are bacteria. We just can
Right.
decide if we want to be good bacteria or bad bacteria on this earth. But everything that we do will lead us our consciousness, where we have to one day at night sleep and just be in that reflection. If we don't like a group of people, like Father says, we can just walk away from them. But if we don't like ourselves, we're
Yeah.
always going to be there until we deal and clean our own path. And sometimes, you know, the path is being cleared for us until a certain point where we need to take our machete out and now make our path to the unknown. But the interesting part about it is that our children and their children will walk through our path until there's no more path anymore, and they will have to continue on their own path. And this is what we've been doing for generations with the Toltec tradition. It's not a religion, it's a way of life. And this is why it's been translated in more than 50 different languages, religions. It's because it's integrity. So when you return to your integrity, you begin walking the path of your authenticity.
Oh, I love that, man. This is such a cool conversation. I know we're almost out of time here, but I just had a question, like from the Toltec tradition. What is their belief on, and it makes sense, right? I think like some of the stuff you're just saying around like interact, like again interacting and with people or with our ideas, and then having you know, I had a mentor that was describing it's like this equanimity, right? This space between like input and reaction, right? And so I receive a piece of information, I think something, and when I'm less conscious or when I'm less trained or when I'm less, I guess, authentic or with my soul, I respond quickly and then I deal with the maybe there's a side effect of that reaction, and then that can be a downward spiral that gets really bad, and there's maybe a lot of suffering with that. What I found is, to your point, I might get input or there might be an interaction and I don't like it, but the difference that I found is that at least when I'm at my best self or when I feel strongest is that I watch my behavior and I go, oh, that's interesting. I'm curious. I go, oh, I wonder why I feel that way, knowing that that it's just me, right? So it's that's what came up for me as you were saying that. But I was curious, like, what's the Toltec's belief around like afterlife? Because if we're all energy and this is just a dream and it'll go away and nobody will know that we had this conversation 200 years from now or 10 years from now, who knows? Um, what's how does the Toltec see the next life or do they have any perspective on this?
Well, it was interesting with a poetry. It was says, "We are the worm that gets into a cocoon and then flies." And when the body, when we get into life, we get into a cocoon, and then when the worm is ready to leave the body, it turns into a butterfly, and that's our soul. And we get for 3 days roaming the earth, and flying just freely. And the interesting thing about that is that we are the energy, and the energy cannot be destroyed. So one of the interesting things is when a body lives is like a big bang. It goes into any container because that's what we are. We're containers. So when we explode, the energy goes into any container close by. It could be hundreds. That's why many people who had that experience, they begin giving descriptions of there being a point of perception, seeing their whole body, seeing their whole life, things that have been happening, because it's the dreaming mind of the collective in the energy around the air, because we're everywhere, we're everything. And there's interesting point. When we have our energy, knowing that it cannot be destroyed as everywhere, and it becomes like a Tesla ball. The moment that people begin thinking about us, thinking about our energy, they're attracting our energy, not our mind. This is very important to realize, because we can create robots, we can create material, but there will be no soul being put into these machines. They could be the program of us knowing, but that's not the real us. That is just a copy of the way we live in this life, because the real us will still be floating in this life, just like our ancestors float in this life. The moment that we make ceremony, we ask our ancestors to be present with us, to give us the strength, because they have never left. And exactly, we will never leave. But it's important for the Toltec to know that they're not the physical body, that physical body is Mother Earth, but we're the energy inside of it. Knowing this, it is very aware that we live for a point and we close our eyes from a point. So our dream, the way that we will live is not in vain, because we will leave things that we overcame to the next generations. Just like, let's say, 100 years ago in the 50s, or I don't know when it was, but almost 70 years ago in the 50s, it was normal to smoke cigarettes. They get into a plane, the doctor tell you that it's okay, but now they tell you it can kill you, because that was back in that day, because somebody lived life they studied to advance humanity to a certain point. That's why from creating pyramids to putting a telescope in the universe, humanity has gone a long way. So our little time in this earth is not in vain. It's an organism of the planet Earth creating itself to expand itself, let's say, to other planets, to other dreams. It's it's infinite what we're really at. The most beautiful thing as a Toltec to realize is that we get the opportunity as an artist to see our own art as it's being created. Now I let everybody ask a question. Could you imagine how beautiful and powerful it would be for you, the artist, to wake up knowing that you're creating your own life and you can do whatever you want from this point on, that you can give yourself the permission to experience things. And not only that, but what the benefit of this will be is that you're giving a gift to the planet. Like if the planet is an altar, you're giving an offering because you're giving ideas, just like Albert Einstein did, giving ideas to go even further, or like Mother Teresa did to love children from a certain point, even though they said that the church renounced her when she was alive, but after she died, she became a saint. Because we will not please anybody's alive because they always want to live in their truth. But the moment that we change the way of something that we come into our point of awareness, we have something to deliver. Like I like the conversation of Michael Jackson being in the studio, and 3 in the morning he calls his engineer, says, "You gotta come, you gotta come." And Michael, it's 3 in the morning. He goes, "You gotta come. I have this idea for a song." Okay, they lay it down, they track it, and they say, "Michael, what was it so important for you to record this song? You needed your rest. Why was it so important for you to, you know, to record it right now?" It's because God gave it to me. And if I don't take action in creating this song and putting it into the studio, he might give it to Prince, and Prince might take my song. So it comes a moment in life when we know if we have an idea, if we don't take action, someone else is going to do it. It's an honor to get an idea from our mind, to create it, to create a
Yeah.
podcast, to create a book, to create a business, to create something that, you know, so one day we're not going to see who it really inspires, but they'll take it to another level, just like we did, whatever inspired us.
Love that, man. Jose, such a treat having you here today. I'm so excited for this podcast. I know, like you're doing a lot of great stuff in the world. If you wouldn't mind, if people want to learn more about the work you're doing, your books, the shaman work you're doing, how can they connect with you? How can they learn more?
Well, I have one social media in Instagram, Don Jose Ruiz, where I just sometimes post art and videos. I've been off lately because I have a new book coming out that is the 10th anniversary of my second book, The Good Friend of Rattlesnake. But this book that is being renewed for is very dear from my heart because it's the story of my life. It's like how I got to get into the position of writing the Fifth Agreement in the first place. But it really is how I overcame my demons, how I overcame my negativity, and it's very, a very personal dream that I talk about my life. And this is what coming out in January. So I'm excited about these presentations that I will be doing for this book called the 5 Agreements with My Good Friend the Rattlesnake, that I will doing live presentations talking about this. So this is the next journey that I will take. And I'm recording a new album with my friends, so of music. So that's another thing that I always love to do.
Love that. Well, we'll go ahead and make sure that we put that in the show notes so you guys can go check that out. And is there links for the new book as well? We can get that on your website or on your social?
Yes, and normally I have it in Amazon for the new book. But yes, normally for the website and the social. Yes.
Okay, we'll make sure to do that. Well, man, we're out of time, but I'd love, if you don't mind, I'd love for us to do the greatness question. Do you have time for that right now?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Ready? Let's do it. What is the number one barrier to creating greatness that you've overcome in your life, and how have you overcome it?
Yes, to break the barrier of disrespect, we take that wall down and we find the reflection of the mirror that's become clean for the first time because it was covered, and that's to respect ourselves. And when we begin living with respect, we respect ourselves with integrity, to not live any more lies, to not live any more drama, to victimization, but to live to our full potential. And that is the strong will when it wakes up, to make of our life a masterpiece of art and continue living for the rest of our life as an artist, as a Toltec, respect as a tool.
Thank you so much. Jose, thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend. It's been wonderful to learn from you and to all your teachings. I'm so excited for the new book and all the music and all the beautiful art you're bringing into the world. Until next time, my friend, thank you for coming on here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Darius. Thank you.
All right. You guys go out there, support Jose. Go check out all the stuff we're going to put in the show notes. And like you said, we got to respect ourselves and we got to live our dreams. Until next time, peace out. We love you. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, If you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.
She's my lover.